Hello and welcome to Dice Masters United. I'm Spug.
I'm Ben.
I'm James.
And I'm Peter.
Coming up in this episode.
The new Infinity Gauntlet set brings drafting back to Dice Masters in a big way. So we take a look at how draft events work, what the recipe is for a successful team, and how you might go about doing one even if you can't get to a physical event.
We'll also be opening up our growing Postbag and responding to some of the feedback we've had from listeners in recent weeks. Might your message be read out?
All that and more in the latest instalment of Dice Masters United.
Since Dice Masters switched to campaign boxes and team packs in 2018, we lost access to randomised products that suited drafting. But that all changed with the launch of the new Infinity Gauntlet expansion, which has given us access to not only great new cards, but for the first time in ages, shiny new packs that are designed to be used in a draft setting. So we're really looking forward to the prospect of getting back to some draft action when the whole COVID nightmare is over and we can actually meet in person again, or when the Infinity Gauntlet product reaches Europe. Not sure which of those is going to come first. Anyway, so what should be our process in approaching a draft tournament? What should we be looking for on the day? And how do the events even work? And let's start with that final question for the benefit of maybe people who haven't done a draft. How do in-person drafts actually work? Ben?
They work incredibly well. It's a very good format to play and a very fun way of getting people new people into the game.
Yeah.
And getting old experienced pros on their feet, well, in their chair, and then on their feet. So how it works is you get a draft pack. You open a draft pack. You'll get 3 basic actions and a certain number of cards. 12? Is that right?
Gonna say 12, yeah.
Yeah, I think 12.
In a pack. You then, in the new format, you draft the 3 basic actions, going whichever direction you choose. After you drafted those 3, and a draft, I don't know how much we need to explain this, but basically you choose 1 card from your hand, you pass the rest on to the next person, and you take up the cards that the person to the other side has given you.
Yeah.
And you do that until all the cards are taken. So then after you've drafted the basic actions, you'll then draft the character cards.
Yeah.
In this case, solely character cards because there's no actions in this set.
Good point.
And then you do this, you take all your dice, you get 2 dice per character.
Yeah.
You drafted. And then you build a team from the 12 cards, character cards, and 3 actions you have.
Yeah, and then you might play a little tournament, or it might kind of be a one-on-one thing. Depends on the precise format, doesn't it? But that's that's a good explanation. So when we're kind of sitting down and we're drafting, what sort of things should we be looking for first, James? Where do we kind of start?
If there's anything you want for your collection. Surely that's
really?
where you start, isn't it? That's where I
That's definitely the way I do it.
Yeah.
Take the red stripes.
If you get a rare
right.
Drax, you're not passing it, are you? You're just not.
All right. Well, I suppose if you're looking to actually win, when you open it, you fan open all the cards that you've just been passed, or you've just picked out the new pack. What kind of things are you looking for first up?
Win con, maybe. Something that I can kill with. Or failing that, some cheap dice. That's what I go for. I'm not very good at drafting, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. I find that I get frustrated even in constructed with the somewhat random nature of the dice. No matter what, you can do things to mitigate it, but the dice can still screw you. And the slightly more random nature of draft screws me over even more horribly. So cheap dice. That's
cheap
mine.
dice. Yeah. What about you, Peter? Where do you start when you're drafting?
Well, I also play Magic, and there for drafts you have the BREAD acronym, which tells you how to prioritize. So the B stands for bombs, the R for removal, the E for evasion, the A for aggression, and the D is for duds. That's the rest.
Right. What does all that mean?
So yeah, bombs are just simply things that are gonna win you the game. Removal speaks for itself. Evasion, there are multiple types of evasion in Magic, but the main thing is flying. And then aggression just is cheaper cards with good stats, basically. So that last one is very applicable to Dice Masters as well. I suppose the bombs as well, something that will win you the game. Just, take that. And then there's removal, which is more of like, not usually direct removal so much in Dice Masters, but things that will make life difficult for your opponent. So sabotage, as we deemed it. And then, but especially the cost of the dice is very important for me in Dice Masters drafts, because you will need some cheaper dice to get to your more expensive dice. So don't go grabbing just 6 costs, because you're not going to do well.
Yeah, I did once have we did a draft and one of my friends came and I kind of get them into the game and they were playing for the first time and they drafted a bunch of cards and they built a team and I hadn't really paid attention to what he was drafting or what he was playing. And at the end of the day, he lost all his games. I went over to him and looked at his team and it was all 4 costs, including the basic actions he had. Every single card on his team was 4 costs.
Yeah.
So cheap dice and variety of purchase costs as well. You also, especially in drafts, you want like that big, expensive dude that you can just kind of buy and win the game with.
Yeah.
If you miss all your rolls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, it's what's your sort of process, Ben, when you start? I mean, what are you looking for first, aside from the card that you need to add to your collection?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever drafted and not done that, to be fair.
Yes, in fact, I think you're the only person who I know who I've drafted with who actually gets out their binder to check, or
yeah, I get my little app.
If the cards they're drafting would fill a space.
Well, I get my app, and I draft like for foils and stuff as well. Yeah, so I would prioritize taking a foil and then just making something with the card. If I have like every single card, the Thor set, I have every single card foil and non-foil for, because I'm on a factory set for it. I suppose then, if I was drafting that, I would go for cheap dudes and ways to kill my opponent. They're the 2 biggest things.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Okay.
Those are cheap dice. Right, we're in agreement.
You are, yeah. Have you got a good acronym, James, for your priorities for drafting?
Yeah, cheese and crisps, which stands for cheese and crisps. I really like crisps. If I open a bag, I can't stop until I finish.
No, that's good. And how important is ramp, Ben? Do you think in a draft setting?
Very difficult to get set up normally. Although global ramp, I think globals are another big thing. Anytime you can get a global in your team in draft that's useful is good, because you're going to have a bunch of spare energy to do stuff with. So ramp globals should be key, but then it's difficult, right? Because thinking about like Uncanny X-Men, one of the things to do definitely in that is pass as many Professor X globals on as you can, because almost guaranteed other people will draft it and put it on their team. So the same could maybe be said with like Villainous Pact in this set.
Yeah. Because of
we might want to
the global on that.
Because of the global, because of the prep global. Yeah, so just let that pass on and then play when you play the person who drafted it, then you can just use that.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, really, because I mean, I always find that there's always kind of a certain degree of tension, and particularly some sets are more prone to this than others, I think. But sometimes, because one of the things we didn't say when we explained the process was that what usually happens when you do a draft is that you'll set out all the dice that are available in the middle of the table, so people can see, if they know what the characters are, they can see how many of each card or each character there are available in the whole kind of draft pool, so you can see if there are loads of one particular character or another. So you can sort of get an idea of what potentially you might get past just by kind of looking at some of those characters. And some sets, more than others, have a bit of a dearth of low-cost characters, I think, don't they? So, Peter, in those kind of environments, what would, are you looking for a win con first? Are you looking for a cheap dice first?
If I have a really good win con, I'll take that, but I will focus on cheap dice. The good thing about the draft packs is that you get 2 dice for each card, so you don't have to worry as much about getting enough cheap dice. If you get 1 cheap character, you already have 2 cheap dice. So it's less of an issue now than it is with just with the old foil packs that only had 1 die for each card.
It definitely made less of an issue as well in Infinity Gauntlet because there's so many basic actions that are 2 costs.
Right. Yeah. So you're saying that you can buy a cheap action.
There's always probably going to be cheap actions available to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use that as a way of kind of ramping up the amount of energy that you've got available. Ben, what's your view on the sort of the win con versus the cheap dice?
I think in Infinity Gauntlet, you'd always go for the win con, but in general, I would go for the cheaper, especially if it's a good statted die. Trying to think of some examples, but I guess any of the antis in that draft. The common and the super rare in particular were just really broken, but that card kind of dominated drafts. Yeah. In all her formats because she had a tune and 3 attack on 2 and 3. Yeah. Level 2 and 3. So she was always just a good one to get and win that way. But any 3 costs, so like the Firefly also had really good stats to smack your opponent in the face, and they were cheap.
Yeah.
And then there was like the Monk. Was it the Monk? And the Indigo people from War of Light.
Yeah. Oh, that's going
they were good and cheap, and like Justice from Civil War. There's a bunch of like good. The 2 costs are where it's been at generally, and 3 costs.
Yeah, that Justice was insanely good. Although I remember, I think we did a few Civil War drafts, didn't we, back in the day? And the common Justice was amazing, wasn't it? Because it was a 2-cost shield with good stats. I think it was a 4 attack, wasn't it, on its level 3?
Yeah, and then it also got pumped by having.
If you had 2 psychics in the field, you just needed 2 psychics in the field, and then it got +2A. So you could get a couple of those out and a couple of sides.
So yeah, I think the example of what we said in the review that we did on our website, the Wong in this set is going to be the clear, obvious threat to a lot of people.
Because he's got good stats and he gets a pump from having a Doctor Strange die.
Who's also cheap, who has really good stats.
Yeah, he's really good.
Speaking of psychics, sorry to interrupt, but do you think it's fair to say that in the process of draft, I don't want to skip the process of your questions, but in a draft, you're more likely to be fielding your psychics because you have less ways of manipulating your bag. So you're going to want to get them out both as blockers and in order to cull them from your bag to get to the good stuff. Is that fair to say? Would everybody agree?
Yeah. The problem with drafts is you often end up with like wall versus wall. Like there's loads of times where we've been in drafts.
Yeah, that's
where
where I'm
you
kind
just
of going.
like look across. Yeah, you look across to like another table, and they have like all 30 dice versus all 30 dice, and it's gone to time, and you're like, what is happening?
When
over
you
there?
mentioned Justice in particular, I remember Civil War being particularly wall-y, and that's partly because you just want to feel those psychics anyway, and then they act as blockers. So maybe the next thing to think about after cheap dice and a win con is some way of getting through those walls if you don't manage to win with an early rush or something. So that comes back to what Peter was saying about, I don't know, did what was in your acronym again? Bread, cheese, evasion, right? And tell us more about evasion in Dice Masters, maybe.
Yeah, so in Dice Masters, occasionally you'll have something that's straight up unblockable, but the most common variety that I would call evasion is Overcrush, where it can be blocked but still do damage. And there's also, of course, direct damage, which gets around the field altogether. So that is pretty huge in draft usually.
So direct damage is like a howitzer lobbing shells over the wall.
Yeah.
Whereas, can we continue this analogy? Whereas Overcrush is like a battering ram, and Unblockable is some sneaky assassin. Hey, that works. Yeah. Come on.
It's good. That's good, James. I'm impressed that you've made that up on the fly there. And there are a few. I mean, there are a few Overcrushers, aren't there, in the Infinity Gauntlet set, particularly, which I think are going to be pretty valuable.
Name them. Black Swan. Go on.
Black Swan, Black Panther. That's got some Overcrush, although it's particularly She-Hulk, of course. Yeah.
Doesn't Black Dwarf give something Overcrush, or is that something else? One of the Black Orders certainly gives.
Yeah, plus 2 attack and Overcrush.
Is it all the ones that start with black have Overcrush? Black Widow, Black Swan, Black Dwarf gives it. Black Panther. It's crazy.
No one sensible likes Overcrush.
not even in draft.
No, I don't like Overcrush. But yeah, no, it's good. It's a strong ability. The unblockable thing definitely was historically a strong ability.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if there's any unblockable stuff in this set though.
Don't think so.
Nothing comes to mind. Yeah. No. There's the Kang is the version of it, isn't it? Where he when he's active, they all have to be blocked with 2, right?
Yeah.
In order to be blocked. Yeah. So that's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be pretty good. One thing we've sort of touched on but not really talked about is the kind of mix of costs. You know, in terms of we want a range of different purchase costs. Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Just kind of building on what you said about your friend who used nothing but 4 costs in his team. Yeah,
so on the surface, that doesn't look too bad, does it? Because theoretically, if you roll 4 dice every turn, so you can always buy a 4 cost.
Yeah.
But actually, it's quite difficult to consistently get several 4 costs in a row. You kind of what you want is a nice arc to your purchases, because you want to be able to buy a cheap character, then always have an extra character you can buy when you have to roll in a character and field it maybe. Then you have a couple more. So say you have 4 dice, you roll 1 as a character face, you have to pay 1 to field it, then you have 2 dice left over. You want something to be able to do with those 2. That's why globals are also useful, because they add to that arc. But then at the same hand, if you roll that character to an energy face, you suddenly have 5 energy. So you want to spend those 5 energy as optimally as possible. So actually having 4 is a really difficult number to hit.
Yeah, it is. And James, sort of following on from that, I mean, what's your view on the sort of energy types situation? Do you think that you're better off kind of really getting a wide range of different energy types in your team, or is it better just to kind of focus on 1 or 2 particular?
Oh, I think that's pretty low down my list of priorities when I'm drafting, if I'm honest.
Below big beat sticks.
I don't think I pay too much attention to that, unless my win con might require a global which requires a particular energy. But I mean, I don't know. That's the sort of thing I would certainly think about in constructed, but I don't think I'll go down that rabbit hole in draft. I think I don't put too much thought into my drafting.
All right. Well, I'll ask someone who does. Peter, what's the mix of energy types? How important is that? And you know, is it better to go for kind of mainly one type?
Well, ideally, I would like my cheaper dice to have at least 2 different types of energy, so I'd always be able to buy one of them. Because if you miss your roll turn 1 and you can't buy any of your cheaper dice, then you're already behind. Or at least have a basic action that's 3 or less.
Yeah, but with the cheap basic actions, that's less of an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
I think it only becomes an issue when you're like down to the dregs of what everyone's passed already, and like maybe you have a 2-cost fist already that you're going to use, and then maybe you have a choice between a 5-cost fist and a 5-cost mask.
Yeah, Goliath.
And then you just choose the fist one just because.
And then never buy it.
Or indeed never even put it on your team when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's much less of a thing though now, because you have much less variety, right?
Yeah, so actually let's while we're on that subject then, let's talk about, because obviously, you know, the new Infinity Gauntlet expansion comes in kind of pre-made draft packs, but obviously we used to do a lot of drafting back in the old days where there were gravity feeds and there were individual packs that just had 2 cards each with a matching die. So Ben, how does a sort of old school draft work? You know, where you get kind of packs and do it that way if people kind of come across old product.
Yeah, so if you have 12 packs, you open 6 of them, you keep them to one side, and then you open another 6 packs, you keep all that stuff to one side, the other side. You then take the first pile, draft it one way, then take the second pile and draft it the other way. And you can look at either pile at either time, but you can't ever cross the piles, which gives you basically two first choices, which is good.
No.
Yeah, I used to
so you
like
have
that.
2 cards that are definitely going to go into your team or
And the dice
in
will
your
go
hand.
in the middle at the start and will be claimed at the end once you've got all your cards. As is the case now with draft packs, I guess.
But of course, the difference, one of the other main differences is that you only get 1 die per card that you draft, whereas obviously with a draft pack,
so you want to draft
they come
multiple
with 2 dice.
cards
Yeah.
of the same type.
So, and then you'll end up with a big heap of stuff that you want to kind of build a team from.
In the current draft format, you have to condense 12 cards down into 8. In the old one, you were condensing 24 cards down to 8.
But then also you'll have to bring your own basic actions or borrow some from a friend because there are obviously no basic actions in the old gravity feed. So it's a kind of different way of doing it. But actually, there is quite a lot of old sort of Dice Masters product kicking around. You know, Amazing Spider-Man, Civil War, that kind of stuff. People seem to be finding it. So it is a good way of having a bit of.
Be careful if you order off Amazon though, and you think you're ordering a gravity feed of, was it Spider-Man? Yeah. And it comes in a big box and it's just 1 booster pack with 2 cards and 2 dice.
You sound like a man who's speaking.
No, that didn't happen to me, but it went up on Facebook. I think somebody got done.
Ouch.
Yeah. Well, you can send it back to Amazon. Yeah, it's still.
Yeah, I think normally in those circumstances they would say keep it, wouldn't they? I think.
Keep that single booster from Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, and
2 Sandmen.
Rare Black Widow or something.
The common and uncommon Sandman, I should think.
Yeah. So, and actually, kind of looking back, I mean, what do we think? What do we think have been some of the best sets to draft? You know, in terms of sets that we've seen and sets that we've drafted. James, what's your view on that?
I am going to start because I'll forget otherwise, but I have a slight feeling for me that most of the drafts I've played seem to be dominated by single characters. Just before we get, I'll just get this out of the way first, because there are certainly good sets to draft, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But for example, earlier Ben mentioned, was it what's his name, Firefly in Batman. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's not guaranteed, but it's almost a case of, you know, whoever gets the common Firefly, well done. Carry on. And there seems to be like one card like that. There's Uncommon Morph in X-Men First Class,
or Boom Boom.
Boom Boom, yeah, and then Yanti maybe or maybe it's 1 or 2
Yanti
cards
for sure.
and then Lantern Ring maybe in War of Light. So that annoys me a little bit, the fact that but that's probably because I'm just not very good at drafting. The sets I've enjoyed most maybe are Batman, I think, even in spite of the Firefly issue. I think Batman was quite a fun set with lots of interactions. I quite enjoyed Civil War, even though it was really War-y. I've drafted that a few times. It's not the best set to draft, but I did quite enjoy it. What else? Go on.
Peter, what are your thoughts on that?
I also really like Batman. Thor was fun because you had these multiple win cons floating around. You could go for the Warriors 3, or you just grab the Hulk.
Oh, that's the Hulk, the Hulk.
Oh, yeah. It's an expensive set. It's an expensive set, though, isn't it? That.
Yeah. So it's a little tricky to get your 6-cost Hulk.
The only time surprise attack was ever useful.
Ben, what have been your favourite sets to draft? What's your preferred go-to ones?
I think it's very much dependent on your experience with that set. I hated Thor because we did a draft of that, and then someone got common Hulk out and just sat there and was just like, "Yep, I'm gonna wait until you attack me and kill yourself." So I really don't like that set, but I think it's very dependent on like your experience with it. I think in general, from a theoretical perspective, I think War of Light probably is the best set to draft because it had so many in-set affiliation stuff. Like all the different lantern rings worked really well together. So I think in theory that's the best set, although I don't know how well it worked out in practice. The super rare and rare lantern battery and ring were really oppressive to play against. But I really like the Yu-Gi-Oh set to draft. That's kind of a wonky set, but it's fun. And then the D&D sets, I think, apart from the Tomb of Annihilation, which was horrendous. The Tomb of Annihilation was really good set to draft as long as no one got Yanti.
Yanti, exactly.
Yeah.
If no one got Yanti, then it was good. The first D&D and the second D&D were really good to draft.
That was my first draft, I think. Red Dragon draft because they had a promo card. And that was somebody did a unicorn team. I think they won. They did unicorn
was really good.
Super cool.
Yeah. But I think it's very much dependent on your experience of how it went when you drafted it.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
I always thought the World's Finest was a good fun set to draft because it's got a lot of interesting stuff in there. I mean, you've got Alfred, obviously one of James's favourite cards, but there's all kind of lots of fun stuff in there. And actually, I do very fondly remember the original Avengers vs. X-Men set and drafting that back in the days where product was hard to come by, but going to my first ever Dice Masters event was an AVX draft, and actually that's got so many good cards in it, and it was probably a better set to draft than it was to play constructed, because obviously at that time Black Widow Super Rare and Gobby Super Rare were the kind of dominant cards, but generally in a draft nobody would get those two cards, so there'd be a bit more of an even playing field, and there's quite a lot of strong cards in that set, just kind of thinking of Punisher, Loki, Hulk,
Johnny Storm.
Johnny Storm, of course, the Storm herself, there's a lot of great stuff, so I think those ones are good. What about the least favourite sets to draft? Have anybody got thoughts on that? For me, it's probably Civil War, because we did it loads of times and it was never a great set. It was just a case of who could get Common Justice. And
no, I don't know. Set draft. It had Baron Zemo. It had the Nitro. I think that's one of the things, again, like with your experience.
That silly Goliath.
Because we did it so many times. Goliath was good, and then the guy with the eye patch.
Nick Fury?
No,
he's not in there.
The sniper guy.
Sniper guy with an eye.
The Overcrush dude.
Overcrush dude, yep.
James, you like him?
Yep.
What?
Outlaw.
He was one of your favorite white guys.
Unlock, lock.
Deathlock.
Deathlock, yes,
okay.
that one.
Of course. Yeah, he
Sniper?
was
No, he's not a sniper, is he? It's just.
He's got this.
It's the crosshairs that. No, I don't think.
Yeah, the crosshairs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm just scarred by doing that one too much.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Ben's right. I think it's very much down to personal experience, because I've definitely I recognise this. I think there maybe is a bit of objectivity to it, and maybe Civil War isn't the best to draft, but I definitely enjoyed it quite a lot.
I think Tomb of Annihilation was the worst one
because of the
draft. Because of the UNT.
I drafted the Tomb of Annihilation, and I had the common Yanti and the rare pseudo dragon.
Really?
Yep.
Well, that was fun for everybody else.
Flippin' heck, yes.
Well, no, but because they were in the same pack, so I had to pass one of them. So I had to take pseudo dragon because I didn't want another Yanti player to get the pseudo dragon, but then I got the uncommon Yanti. I still didn't do well in the drafts for some reason.
Excellent. Now, obviously, at the moment, kind of in-person drafts for a lot of us are pretty difficult, but I think there is, Peter, isn't there a way that we can actually do them virtually? Obviously people are playing a lot of Dice Masters online at the moment, and I think we can always do a virtual draft, can't we? How can we go about doing that?
So on the dicecoalition.com, our friends over in the US, they have some very fun stuff. among which is a draft pack generator. If you go to the website, there's a drop-down menu with tools, and then there's a draft pack generator. And over there, you can select which sets you want to play, and if you're drafting basic actions or not. And then you can click Get Packs, and then it will create a draft for you.
All right.
And it will make, I think, eight packs randomly.
Right.
I think you can limit. You can say how many packs you need to create, though.
You can select between 1 and 8 because I'm following your instructions as you speak.
Yeah. So yeah. So you can set the pack count to anywhere between 1 and 8. And then you can create packs, and you can also do this with some of the campaign boxers or stuff. And then once you've done that, there's a link for Create Draft Room, and that will open a draft room where you can invite people to join you in there, and then everyone will get a pack, and then you can just draft virtually. And then in the end, so you can either use proxies, or if you have the actual cards in your collection, you can play those, and then you can play over webcam, as we do so very often, and have your draft online.
Brilliant. And what a great thing to be able to do at the moment, because I don't know if we've actually said this, but I think that drafting is fab, I think, and I think it's a really fun way of playing the game. I think it always seems like a far more relaxed kind of approach to playing the game, but it's actually great because you get to play with cards that you wouldn't necessarily normally get out of the binder, and you can try some new things and try maybe some slightly wacky combos that maybe take a little bit longer to develop than in a constructed environment. And I always think it's great fun. So that's really brilliant to have that facility available for anybody who wants to use it.
It also removes, it's by Truby, we should say. Well done, Truby.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So do, if you want to do an online draft, if you've got some friends that have got webcams and you want to do it that way, then just head to the dicecoalition.com website. And as Peter said, in the tools section, you can find the draft pack generator, and that'll be a great way of going about doing it. All right. Well, while we're on the subject of drafting, we've had a bit of correspondence come in, and I know, Ben, you have spoken on the podcast previously about your experience of drafting at the World Championships last year, and you mentioned about, well, why don't you tell the story just for the listeners' benefit?
Sure. So we were drafting some of the prototype cards from the Infinity Gauntlet set, and I had an opportunity to do that draft, and I was passing to a wonderful person called Jocelyn, who is very, very nice person and not a terrible person. And in my hand, I had, so one of the keys actually we didn't talk about when drafting is take your time, read the cards. What I often like to do actually is put the card, which drives everyone mad. If you want to drive people really up the wall, is when we do drafts, I put all of the cards that I draft in alphabetical order, so that I can look them up better on the search engine I do for the rarity drafts. So I will sit there and order all 24 cards, and then choose a card, then pass on, then order the next 23 cards. So I tell everyone before we start drafting to put them all in alphabetical order, so I can make better use of my time when searching through the binder. But actually, because it was a prototype thing, I was kind of looking at rarity, obviously, but also kind of what characters I liked and what cards are pretty. And anyway, I had the option of drafting in my first hand a super rare Star-Lord or the rare Spider-Man. And I was like, oh yeah, both these cards don't seem very good. Just having skimmed read this rare Spider-Man, and I thought it worked like the psychic fixes, where you span one of your characters down to an energy face. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but it's no worse or better than the Star-Lord, which gives your characters +2 attack with Energize. So I was like, oh, I'll take the super rare version. So I passed that pack on to Jocelyn, who then drafted the rare Spider-Man. and we proceeded to have to play each other in the game. And she left a very nice note about what happened during that game.
Indeed. So in the episode, the one we talked about in our review about the uncommons, Ben, you said that that Jocelyn had used the rare Spider-Man to spin down one of your characters to a single mask, but she writes to us and says, I just finished up the episode on the uncommons and wanted to send in a correction. When Ben was playing the collector and I spun it down to energy with rare Spider-Man, I gave him 2 masks. He couldn't do anything with either of them as he'd already fielded a sidekick, but I gave them to him all the same, smiley face.
Salt in the wound.
Adding insult to injury. Very Canadian.
So arguably that's worse, but Jocelyn, thank you very much for being in touch. And for anybody who doesn't know, do have a listen to Jocelyn does a podcast with Kim, thank you, called Double and Dice. Do check it out. So Jocelyn, thanks very much for being in touch.
And thanks for rubbing salt into Ben's wounds. I think you should be saluted for that.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
All right, well, that's our guide to drafting. Hope you found that useful. Hope you found it interesting. And if you get the chance to draft, then please do it, because as we said before, it is brilliant fun, whether you do it in person or using the Dice Coalition tool. Do get out there and give it a go. But we'll move on to the next segment. All right, well, we said in the last episode that we were going to pick up on a bit of the correspondence that we've had over the last few weeks from people who have got in touch. So if you've sent us an email or a message, thank you very much for getting in touch. And we're just going to pick up on a few of those now, starting with Andy May, who, after we did our epic walk through all of the cards in the Infinity Gauntlet in the Infinity Gauntlet expansion, he sent us an email talking about the Groot Global. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Groot Global on the Groot cards in the new set says pay a shield, choose an affiliation of a character die you have fielded this turn, move a character die with that affiliation from your use pile to your bag. And Andy says the Groot Global is amazing with a few dice on the same low cost character. I can buy one on the turn that I field, and then throw the new one into the bag. It was great for flooding the field with my 2-cost Drax. I think that it could work really well in Constructed, but have yet to explore that piece. What do you reckon, guys? Has he got a point?
Definitely good for draft. I'm all right with that. I'm not sure about Constructed, but
yeah,
for draft, for sure.
Maybe in the future. If we get something that's cheap and that you really want to spam, then that might be good.
He also points out that the rare Moon Knight, which is the one that copies an Avenger at the start of the game, works very well with the uncommon She-Hulk. Now, that uncommon She-Hulk is the one that has the 8-cost character who has Overcrush. Yeah, but she costs 1 less to purchase for each non-villain, non-psychic die in your field zone. So if you can get that for 1... then obviously
the good thing about this one, because in draft you're not limited by the max die thing on your card, so you can play 4 Moon Knights if you want to, if you can get them.
In draft, good point. Because we haven't actually mentioned that, did we? The general convention is that dice limits don't count in draft. So yeah, that's a good point actually, Peter. Yeah, because obviously the rare Moon Knight in Constructed is limited to 1.
Yeah.
And he also says Pip the Troll's stats make him even better because he's so easy to KO. That's referring presumably to the rare where you can spin down 2 opposing characters. And he says this has been an amazing set to draft, even discounting the fact that it's been a really long time since we drafted. Keep up the great work. Andy, thank you very much for being in touch.
Yeah, thank you. And we look forward to drafting it ourselves eventually.
One day. Yeah. Oh, we should say that Ben's had to step away, so it's just the 3 of us carrying on through the correspondence. But we'll carry on with an email that we've had from Mook. I think, apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. Almost certainly I have. But he says, just wanted to say huge thanks for your blog and Facebook page. I've recently got back into running tournaments with a small group of family and friends, and your dice fights have given me some solid formats to try. So that's really great to hear. And he sent a list of some of the ones that he's picked up on and some of the ones that have given him inspiration for doing events. And it's just really great to hear that the Dice Fight James has helped inspire some other people to get a local scene going themselves.
It is really lovely to get such feedback. It's really lovely to get any feedback, even if it was negative. If it was constructive, it would still be lovely. But it's always nice because we do these things in like everything we do. The videos, the podcasts, the Dice Fights. They're all in a bit of a vacuum, and you don't really know. Dice Fight a little bit lesser because obviously you're speaking to the people and communicating with them. But a lot of what we do is in a vacuum and has been for years, and you don't really know if people are enjoying it. And this was such a lovely communication I had with him, and he obviously, I mean, my intention was to not only to give people a place to play, but also to create these series of blogs were supposed to be like a resource that people could dip into if they wanted to create similar events of their own. They basically would have the template there ready to go, and please feel free to copy and paste. And this is Merck is the first person who has actually picked up and said that is what he's done, and I was chuffed. I was over the moon.
Yeah, no, great.
So thank you very much for writing.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. And he says, you've got a great polish to your branding and everything you present. Currently my preferred information source for all things Dice Masters, which is very nice to hear indeed. I think maybe your idea that everything that we do has great polish has probably taken a significant knock in the mangle that we've made of your name, so apologies for that.
But it might be somewhat recovered by the fact that Spug has actually had this professionally printed up and framed and put over this particular paragraph.
Oh, you lie. All right. James, tell us a little bit about some of the correspondence that we've had about Dice Fight. While we're on the subject of Dice Fight, some other people have got in touch about Dice Fight and particularly Dice Fight XL.
Yes, we had, and I must say, I'm still working on the pricing. Don't worry, people. I know you haven't had your pricing yet, and I am still working on it. I'm just very slow. It's summer, and I'm useless, but it's coming, trust me. But yes, people were very, very lovely in writing to say that they'd had a good time, that they'd enjoyed it. Moshpit Medic, thank you for your communication. Empire Rick, thank you very much indeed. And who else was that? I think there was, Dana, aka General Nemesis. Thank you very much. And a lovely email from Danny, also known as Nefarious Broadcaster, who had been in touch, I think, before the event. And he wrote again after the event saying that it was his first online experience and his first game against an opponent other than his wife. And basically that he really, really enjoyed it. And he said, despite the initial nerves and concerns over my setup and team and game plan and general skill and understanding of the game, I actually had a great time. All my opponents were a pleasure to meet and play against. They were all welcoming and encouraging. I learned something from each of them, which was really my objective for the evening, along with not dying before turn 3, which I managed to achieve as well.
Yeah,
fantastic. That was really, really lovely, and thank you to you, Danny, and also to everybody who took part, who made it such a lovely experience for him and for everybody else. Really good.
Yeah, no, really good to hear that people had a good time with Dice Fight XL, and behind the scenes, I think there might be a little bit of discussion going on about when we can do Dice Fight XL version 2.
That would be Dice Fight XXL, presumably.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe XLI. I don't know. Would that...
I was thinking, actually, about the Roman side of it. Is XL, is it 40?
It's 40,
is L 50?
yeah.
Right,
it's
so
40, yeah.
Yeah, I'll put some thought into that.
So you'd have to be... Oh, that's not going to go well. I think.
Can we do Nick's? Can we do Nick's?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Not that we're actually going to answer it, but
yeah. So Nick Jackalope Spam has also been in touch. Thank you for listening, and he says listening to the podcast on Rares, and he also picks up on Moon Knight, which we've talked about one of you was going to remind the listeners what Moon Knight does.
Yes. So Moon Knight has a text saying, at the beginning of the game, choose one of your Avengers character cards. For the remainder of the game, Moon Knight is considered to have the text of that card, including global abilities, instead of his own text.
Nice. And he had a question about how that interacts with Doctor Strange. James, what does Doctor Strange say?
Doctor Strange, never have you known his like. It's a 7-cost mask. While Doctor Strange is active, when an action die is used, you may use a copy of its effect. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Yeah, so next question is, if Moon Knight copies Doctor Strange, what happens when you play an action? Is it an unending resolution? Play the action, Doctor Strange plays it, Moon Knight plays it, then Doctor Strange plays Moon Knight's copy, Moon Knight plays Doctor Strange's action, ad infinitum. That's one for the rules lawyers, I'd say. Anybody want to answer that?
I'll give my position is that it sounds like it should work. If it works, then it would be an infinite loop, and then it either stops after 3 instances per the ruling, unless it kills one of the players. I want it to work. Peter, what do you think?
I'm not so sure, because I think even if you use an action that deals damage, it's not the copying itself that deals damage, so to speak. So I think it would just stop after the copies.
Oh, but you think that it is infinite, effectively?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it would be infinite. So then the question is: so it is infinite, and the ruling from WizKids says that if you have an infinite loop which doesn't auto end itself by killing one of the players directly from the cards involved in the loop, if I'm understanding correctly, then that's game break. That's a game as a broken state, and it should stop after 3 instances. I don't know if it's 3 instances or 3 instances of repetition. I think it's a total of 3. But if the things which are directly involved in the repetition, in the loop, actually do damage and will bring the game to an end by killing somebody, then that can be allowed to happen. Is that right, Peter? Or Spug?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I believe it is.
Anyway, without wanting to confuse the listeners any more than they are already, I suggest, Nick, you take that up with WizKids.
Yeah, probably best.
Good idea. And finally, someone got in touch on Facebook called Zaza, and Zaza said, can I gain weight losing life gain because I have lost weight?
There is an explanation for this. There is an explanation for that.
Go on, James.
For one of the dice fights, which was life gain, so it was, I think you started at 0 life, and the winner was the person who got to 20 first. Perfectly normal name, life gain. When I was trying to find a nice image for it, it's. I really like doing my thumbnails and stuff and my pictures for the dice fights and for the videos. But it's much easier if I've got some sort of comic subject to find. A more abstract term like life gain is a bit more difficult to illustrate. And so I ended up using a picture of a product called life gain, which I think I didn't really pay much attention to, but it was just an image to me. But I think it's one of these protein powders or something, a whey powder, which people use to gain weight or something like that. Some supplement. And I guess what has happened is that this Zaza has Googled life gain and under images found that image in my Facebook post or something, and then got in touch through my Facebook page. So I at first I was really confused, and then I thought, maybe I'll just get rid of that image. So I went back and deleted it. So that's yeah. There was no further correspondence after that. I said, how may I help you? And that was about it.
Well, Zaza, thank you for getting in touch. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast and all the Dice Masters content, and that you are able to life gain. Maybe you can prove actually that life gain is a good thing to do in Dice Masters. I don't know.
There were just before we go on, Spug, there were a couple of people. I've only got one here, but there were a couple of people praising Peter's and Lonnie's mats. And there was one from Mike who said he loved the custom mats. Now I have a feeling. Forgive us if we've forgotten anybody. I have a feeling there was one or two other people who had said how much they loved Peter and Lonnie's stuff. So thank you to those people too.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody who has got in touch. If you want to drop us an email about anything, then by all means, we would love to hear from you. The email address, James, is
hello@dmunited.eu.
Yeah, and if you've got anything to say, if you want to pick up on anything that we've said in this or a previous podcast, then do drop us a line.
Feedback, questions, criticism, anything. We love it.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. Okay, well, just me and James here now, just to kind of round things off with a bit of any other business. And the first thing we wanted to talk about was the Ministry of Dice UK Games Expo virtual tournament that just took place just yesterday as we record this final outro. And congratulations to General Nemesis, who came out top in that event with his super rare Thor team. I didn't play in this event, James, but you did. How did it go, and how did you find it? What did you play, and what was good on the day?
Well, it was very good. It was a very good tournament, and just really well done to everyone, obviously to Andy and Chris and anyone else who was involved in organising it. Lots of competitors. Obviously, everybody was nice, and the organisation on the day was also really good. And I particularly appreciate that Chris kept it running to time, because it was a real danger, I thought, that it could run long. And he kept cracking the whip, so that was really good. So really good. Everything was good. I played also Super Rare Thor, some variation of what I did in that video the other day. It was all right. It wasn't, obviously I didn't practice it very much. Needed work, clearly. What did I do? I played. I beat Nick's God Catchers, so that was satisfying. He managed to get like 8 out in the field at some point. Yeah, it was pretty gross. And then I managed to come back. And who else did I play against? Alex, I think. Alex with his parasites and unblockable stuff.
Oh, he loves his parasite.
He did. I don't think the rolls went very well for him, not at all. Sorry, Alex. And then I got roundly battered by Ronathan, who was running a really interesting rush build with the Rush Gamora, the 3-cost Fist Gamora, and he also had one of the Jubilees from the X-Men Forever set. Yeah. And he was also using Yawning Portal, which I was, except he was using it much better than me. He had Becky, but I don't reckon he bought it. I don't think he bought it. He was really just using it for the Prep Global to time his Yawning Portal. And of course, Yawning Portal allows you to put stuff in the bag, and then drawing a die with Rush basically lets you draw extra dice which match whatever the Rush trigger is, which in this case is bolts. Yeah. So he's drawing Yawning Portals, which are bolts, Jubilees, which are bolts, and then if he's worked it out right, he draws another Gamora, which allows you to duplicate all of the Rush triggers that you've already done. Yeah. And it worked really well. He'd obviously got it very well worked out. It looked like it required some concentration. He seemed to be concentrating pretty hard, but he certainly roundly thrashed me 2-0. And I thought it was really interesting, because she was a card that I'd been looking at, although Ben poo-pooed it. I think that could be. I think there's something in that. So that was nice. And then basically he also, another one of my favorites, which was the Weaponers Ring, Yellow Lantern Ring. Yeah. But I've had mixed success with it, although I like it a lot. But it was the perfect complement to that team, because he was drawing so many dice. I mean, basically he was buying huge numbers of dice at a discount with Yawning Portal. Yeah. And then loading them into his bag, which sounds like an awful strategy, but in fact it's not, because he was drawing them all because of Rush. And then he was rolling like 14 dice, 10 of which maybe were character dice. And the odds are that, at least 5, 7.5 of those are going to turn up as characters, which is going to intimidate away your opponent's field. And then you just walk through with, a couple of Gamoras. I think he had Angela, the Infiltrate Angela, as well, as a sort of as a coup de grace, so to speak. So that was really, really good. Really good. Well done to him. Then I played Ben in round 4, who was salty as you like. But not to me particularly, but he was not. I don't think he was enjoying himself and the meta, not the tournament so much as the meta that much. But nonetheless, he beat me. I mean, I had a 6 cost which I missed on turn, whenever it was, turn 3, so turn 4 maybe. That's the old 6 cost curse, together with my unoptimized team. And then in the last round, I played Ollie, who was a very good sport, but his dice were not cooperating at all.
Really?
He could not roll Becky he couldn't roll her to a character face, and when he did, it was the tiny Becky face. So I managed to beat him. So I went 3 and 2 or something. It was very middling performance.
Yeah.
It was good. It was. I mean, of course, everybody was lovely as ever, and the highlight for me was Ronathan's team. I like that rush, and I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good, and I think he was able to show that rush mechanic is a potential goer. I think for future teams, because it doesn't, it's kind of like Swarm but better, because you can have loads more dice that fit the criteria, and you don't need to have something active. And also the other cool thing is that if you manage to draw, it can sort of be retrospective. I think if you draw a Gamora, then while you're rushing, you draw another Gamora, then that starts the whole process all over again. So it's like it's crazy. You can draw so many dice, and it just becomes a bit overwhelming, I think, for your opponent. So it was really good to see.
Literally. I was literally overwhelmed.
Maybe not actually literally, but you were in a Dice Master.
No, I was literally overwhelmed. It was like a wave of dice cascading over. Yes. I would say one thing. Everything was super good, but just from a personal perspective, I found it incredibly hard to concentrate for 5 hours straight. I would find it hard to do that with anything, particularly a sort of quite tactical game which requires quite a lot of concentration. So just from my perspective, I'm sure other people were absolutely fine with it, but regardless of the pros and cons of best of 3 versus best of 1, and I recognise that they exist, but just from a practical standpoint, I think I personally prefer best of 1 because I like to have a little break between rounds. I like to go and have a breather to get out of the hot room where I play Dice Masters. I like to spend 10-15 minutes with my daughter and my wife, go and have some crisps and some cheese perhaps. And that just wasn't possible. When you play best of 3, it invariably takes 45. You're lucky if you can get it done inside 45 minutes. And so by the time you add up there's a certain amount of time you need to get started, and then you're lucky if you've got a 5-minute break before the next round, which wasn't optimal for me. But I'm sure other younger players had no problem with such.
Yes, your powers are weak, old man. To quote a bit of Darth Vader, but yeah, no, it did seem like a really good event. I caught some of it by watching some of the various streams that were going on. Ronathan himself was actually streaming his various games. So if you want to see how his team played out, then you can catch that on his YouTube channel. We can put a link to that in the show notes, I'm sure, can't we, James?
Oh, I should think we can do that.
I should think so. So if people want to catch that, I was watching Ross's stream for a bit, and he had various games on, it was some really good stuff, and it was good to see a super rare Thor team actually come out rather than just kind of God Catchers and Becky's, which obviously there are a few of those around, but General Nemesis's team with his super rare Thor managed to come out on top. It looked like he was using a first turn purchase of a 2-cost Kree captain, and then
clay
facing that in turn 2 to use that to activate the Kree captain global, and then hence get a discount on buying Thor early doors. So I think that's what he was doing to great success. So congratulations to him, and a really good event overall.
Good show.
And while we're on the subject of events, we've got Dice Fight coming up over the next couple of Thursday nights, James. The weekly online dice tournament that takes place starting at 9 p.m. UK time, 10 p.m. Slovakia time. What's coming up over the next couple of weeks, James?
So on the 27th of August, which is in just a few days, we're going to have a greenish event. I think green event, because we've had a lot of competitive stuff recently.
Yeah.
So a green event, and since Avengers Infinity Gauntlet is on everyone's minds, but not necessarily in everyone's hands, we're going to go with Avengers. Any Avengers you like, except the horrible, nasty ones, which are definitely not green, even though they might be green. Goliath, for example. No, not that one. Don't do that one. But Avengers. But a nice... Yes, not that one either. But yeah, there will be nice green Avengers, shall we say. And then on the 3rd of September, since it is the first Thursday of the month, it is time once again for the Legacy event, the 6th Legacy event, which is probably by this time a bit orange. I think it's still a bit red, actually. I competed in the last event and got trounced. I was determined to play Alfred until it wins, but I don't think I might be in for months of
One day,
misery.
James, one day. It will be the best card available in the pool.
I think I would be better off spending some time actually making a team rather than just playing the Alfred that's on my mat ad infinitum. So I think it's still a bit red, actually. There's plenty of filth left in. I don't even know if Goldcatcher's been banned yet. So that will be on the 3rd of September, Legacy number 6. The ban list will be in the blog post and is also integrated into the team builder. Thank you, Truby, once again for everything you do. There's a click down in format for Dice Fight Legacy, and there you go.
Brilliant. All right, well, that's everything from us. We'd love to hear from you, as we were saying before, so do get in touch using the email address of hello@dmunited.eu if you want to pick up on anything in this episode or a previous episode of the podcast. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast using your favourite podcast app. Other than that, that's all we're going to be talking about today. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. It also removes the cost, which is what, as a title, the main thing I don't really like about drafts, because it is everything you say is true. It's fun. You play stuff that you don't normally play, but it costs money, man. And it's, I mean, I don't know. You just end up with a load of chaff that you don't want, and maybe the odd couple of cards that you do. So I get slightly irritated by how much it costs. Sorry, tight. But if you use Truby's draft pack and you've got a decent collection already, or you can proxy the dice, then it doesn't cost anything. Brilliant. And you don't have to go out of your house. Even better.
It suits you down to the ground, James, isn't it?
I'm creating a very poor impression of myself, but it's probably quite accurate.
Yeah.